or whatever, you can record. There you go. That's even better. Great. So Jess and Alex, this might be your first webinar in a while. Do you want to kick things off by saying hello?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jessica Sykes, and I work as the community coordinator here with SparkPath alongside Alex. And I work with teachers and students primarily in helping bring the challenge mindset to the classroom in a practical and meaningful way.
Thank you, Jess. Hello, everybody. My name is Alex McKercher. I'm also a community coordinator here at SparkPath, and I've met with a few of you just post the NACE and NCDA conferences, and we've been discussing the challenge mindset, and I'll also be here after the call if you have any questions, and I'll drop my email in the chat as well if you wanted to connect and just touch on any of the points we talked about in regards to the challenge mindset and anything SparkPath. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Jess. And Camille isn't here. Camille's been working for SparkPath for almost 2 years now. She's in Milan, in Italy right now. And I just thought, doing a webinar at 10 p.m. is not a good, work-life balance environment. But I feel really grateful to have Camille, Alex, and Jess on my team. The things we're able to accomplish together just allows us to serve more people. So I'm so grateful for the state of the SparkPath team. And I'm sharing that joy with you all today. And I think for us to get to know each other, it would be useful if you could all say a quick hello in the chat. Would you mind sharing your name? Your name's already there, your organization and which city you're in. Just that way we can break the ice, and we're going to be asking you questions throughout the session. I think this is a great way to get to know each other and for you to see who else is using the physical challenge cards or digital challenge cards or just the challenge mindset in general. So let's see here. Okay, Carolyn or Brenda, you went first, so you get the points for being first. Hi, Kim. Kim, did I ever tell you that I lived in Pittsburgh for 2 years? I know you're Pittsburgh State University, but just something for you to know.
Pittsburgh, Kansas, or
I know
Pennsylvania?
it's different.
Yeah.
It's not as exciting. It's not the same.
I'll take
You must
it.
get out that all the time. Alex and I were on the phone with Ottawa University, which is in Kansas, right? And we live in Ottawa in Canada. So it's one of those, connections by name.
Easy to remember, I guess.
That's right. Exactly. Great. Okay, fantastic. So thanks, everybody. If you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself now, please do using the chat. So let me get a good version of my shared screen. And Alex, can you confirm that this is a 10 out of 10 share?
10 out of 10.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, great. I'm really excited about this topic. We've done maybe 6 or 7 of these webinars. For some reason, this one I think is the most controversial one I'm bringing to you. And maybe that's too serious of a word, but I want to show you some ideas that I've been digging up when I'm writing the challenge mindset book. This is on the specific chapter I'm writing about identity, self-awareness. When does it come in the career development process? So I hope I have some fun, provocative ideas to share with you today. And I would really love your reaction along the way of what's resonating, what's not resonating, because not only do I think that this will bring some new, refreshing elements to your practice, you're going to help me write my book chapter in the sense of telling me how this resonates with your experience of the thousands of people that you've helped. So that's one of the reasons I was excited. So the way we're going to cover that is we're going to go through myth or fact. First, know thyself. What does this mean? And then we're going to tackle this question, self-awareness, should it come before the challenge cards or after the challenge cards? And then we'll get to debrief and discuss together. In terms of the content I'll present to you, I'm trying to summarize today 20 hours of research and content in 20 minutes. So I'm going to do my best attempt, and you'll let me know afterwards how I did. But please feel free to chat, ask questions. If you want to share some of these ideas on social media, please feel free to. This is one of the first times I'm actually going to share evidence behind what I do. Maybe it's not a best practice and beautiful PowerPoint slides, but because this topic is different, than what I think is the norm. I thought it would be fun for you to see some of the evidence behind the ideas I'm presenting. And I want you to know that you'll have access to these slides. In fact, Alex, you can even share them right now if you'd like, to make this link accessible with everyone, so that you don't need to worry about, well, what book did you say? What article, like what reference? You'll have that along the way. Okay, for those of you who are here for the first time and have never met SparkPath and never heard of the challenge mindset, our tools are used by over 100 schools, colleges, and universities all across North America. Some of them in Singapore, some of them in New Zealand, and we've helped over 40,000 students prepare for their future. And this is through the digital challenge cards or the physical challenge cards. And today, I see my role as sharing the insights of what I'm learning, what I'm researching, what these students are telling me, and what these schools are telling me. And I think a useful way of starting this is if I started with a poll. Actually, I prepared a little poll for you here. And Alex, Alex, I need to take back the hosting privileges from you, unfortunately, to do that. But do you think that will work if you give it back to me?
Yes, I can.
Great, thanks.
Should be good to go. And I'm going to share the slides with everyone just after the call. So
Oh.
keep a lookout for that.
Perfect. Okay, Alex, give me your thumbs up, thumbs down. Can you see that?
The poll is not, yep, just popped up right now.
Great. So here's what I'm asking you. When should a student discover their strengths, values, and interests? Before they do the challenge cards? After they do the challenge cards? Either one's fine, or I'm not sure. This is a question of your opinion, your ideas, your practice. I'm just curious as to what you think. And Jess, are you seeing live the answers? Boom, boom, boom. Or is that just me because I'm the host? Can you see like
Just you. I'm not seeing the answers live.
oh,
on
it's
my end.
exciting. I'm sorry you're missing out on this, Jess. This is like a live action game show, like a casino. Ding, 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 ding. But as soon as I press end poll, you'll get to see the results.
Cool.
But it's really split so far. Okay, 28 out of 32. I think that's the best we're going to do. The four of you who didn't get a chance to do this, I know you're driving in your car on your way home. Don't even worry about it. End poll, here are the results. Can you tell me, are you surprised at these results, or is that what you'd expect to see? Anybody want to jump in? Feel free to unmute yourself or just answer in the chat. Is this what you expected to see, or is this different?
This is Carolyn. It's what I expected to see, with the majority being either one is fine and kind of a split answer. It's interesting. I do it all at the same time. I had never thought of your question before. And now that I have your question, I'm actually thinking before the challenge cards would be really fun.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's the default answer, like let's do self-awareness first before we explore the labor market. And when I've seen that process used, I've seen some disadvantages with doing it first, although that's traditionally what we've done. And that's one of the things I want to walk you through today to get your opinion on. I'm going to add some comments from the chat. Michael Ford says it's an ongoing process, so not surprised. It can be at different parts. Celeste, I'm suspecting after challenge cards because it's different from what we would normally think. You already see where I'm hinting, don't you, Celeste? So I get it. Depends where the person's at. Yes, because kids do not have a good sense of themselves. I think it serves as a good prompt. Okay, so let's dig in as to this idea. I framed it as first know thyself, which is known as a Greek maxim. That's the first thing you got to do. And the world tells students that they should find themselves. But where should they look? Is their identity hiding under a rock somewhere? The find yourself paradigm says that students should dig and dig, and eventually they'll come up with the truth about who they are. I think dream enablers see this differently. Now, what's a dream enabler? I think that's someone who prepares students for a meaningful future and helps them achieve their dreams. I think this is you. You are dream enablers. And I think that dream enablers do not believe in this myth. Here's why. The self that we're looking for is ever changing. According to the latest brain research, our brains are not fully formed until the age of 25. And after that, thanks to the plasticity of the brain, we have tremendous capacity for change. Even on a cellular level, the human body replaces itself every 7 to 10 years. As people, we're constantly changing, yet we underestimate how much. Psychologist Daniel Gilbert shares that human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think they're finished. We think we're done changing, but it's just not true. The truth is that we're just at one point of time in a continuum of constant change. We chronically underestimate how much we change. And Daniel Gilbert calls this the end of history illusion. And he has a fantastic TEDx talk or a TED talk, one or the other, that talks about this if you're curious in checking it out. And there's also a great deal of research that shows just how much our personality changes over the course of our lives. So this idea, first find yourself, is also at the heart of the job title mindset, right? Picking one thing, because it suggests that you can measure who you are and get matched to a job title, because who you are won't change much. And the more evidence I collect, the more I see that we do change a lot. And it's important to take account of that in the career exploration process. So if we're not giving the advice, first know thyself, what else can we say? I'm going to make the case today for helping students write their stories. What do I mean by write your story? This involves imagining the experiences you want to have, characteristics you want to develop, strengths you want to improve, goals, places you want to be, battles you want to fight, struggles you want to overcome, and more. I'm talking about our students, of course, right? The people that we help. A great way for a student to write their story is to ask, in order to contribute to this challenge that I care about, who do I need to become? That might be the most important sentence I think I say in this entire session that we have together. A student chooses a challenge card and asks, in order to contribute, who do I need to become? Imagine helping them build a character that's about to embark on a journey. According to Dr. Hal Hirschfield at UCLA, seeing your future self as a different person would be a clear next step in doing that. So let's compare the two ideas, right? Find yourself and write your story. When we talk about find yourself, it's about your past. Write your story is about your future. One focuses on the current self. The other focuses on an aspirational self. And I love this word, aspirational self, aspirational identity, or this phrase rather. One question asks, who am I? The other asks, who do I want to become? And you're right. Finding yourself is about like the sum of your characteristic that forms your identity, whereas your story is your identity in action. Nicola, I wrote this down like when we met one day. I don't know if you said this to me, if I picked this up from somewhere, or just so you know that there's inspiration from one of our meetings together. When we say find yourself, students might think about waiting until they have the right answer before taking action. Whereas with write your story, we know that they can start now. So in career development, what I found is that we overvalue the importance of the past self at the expense of the future self. There is tremendous value in reflecting on our past in order to prepare for our future. In fact, I would argue that there's a lack of self-awareness in the world, and we are uniquely equipped to raise people's level of self-awareness. That's a gift in our world today. However, helping students create an aspirational self by writing their stories has tremendous value for them in the short and long term. Let me tell you why. Actually, no, I won't tell you why. Let's pause here. I want to get your thoughts, questions, reactions so far. What do you think about what I just said? Lennox said, I like the title Dream Enabler. I'm glad you said that. We actually came up with it in one of these webinars. I asked folks for advice, and I think I had suggested Dream Builder, but Dream Builder took away the responsibility of the students to build the dream. So the suggestion was Dream Enabler, and I forget who to give credit for, but that word, I think I checked with Jess earlier in my book draft. I think it's there like 60 times. So I'm glad it works with you. And Celeste, you also mentioned learning through experience. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I just think if I saw the age of 14 in there somewhere, and I think if we wait till the age of 14, when maybe personalities begin to develop or come together, then we're wasting a lot of time. First of all, that we need to help our students when they're younger to develop ideas and thoughts about who they are, you know, what their characteristics are, world of work, and that sort of thing. But yes, I think all learning is really through experience.
Yeah, and you guessed where we're going with this, because I have a big section on setting goals and experiences coming up. So I'm curious to know what you'll think. And here's Kim's comment: we need to balance out value of past and future selves, take the best and create the rest. What a great summary. You know what that makes me think of, Kim? Is a book that I really like called Range. And Range is from David Epstein. It's about why generalists thrive in a specialist world, or something like that. So it opposes generalists and specialists. And what I think that David Epstein accomplishes in the book is that he pushes the entire culture to value generalists, which traditionally have not been valued. We value specialists, expertise, and deciding early on. I have a similar intent in form with this webinar today. What I'd like to do is shift to not only looking at the past self and to rebalance it with the future self. I think if we uniquely look at one or the other, we're missing out on a ton of value. Patricia shares, working with high school students, 16, 17, with very little life, work, extracurricular experience. I love the idea of the aspirational self. It grieves me to see them limit their future perspective based on their limited past perspective. I think that's a great way of putting it. So let's put ourselves in their shoes. You know, their parents have had a few jobs each. If that's their only exposure to the world of work, the few jobs that their parents have had, they're missing out on 19,998 other job titles or opportunities, right? So very well said. Okay, love your comments. Let's keep going. I'm going to share that screen. Alex, looking for a thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so the research I've seen says that most people want to change their personality traits. I don't know if that surprises you or not, but Write Your Story gives students this power to create and take action on the change that they want to see. Students can do this by creating that aspirational self, the person they want to become. And we can help them do that while acknowledging and celebrating what they already bring to the table. Kim, this is my version of what you just said. Okay, but I think you said it better. There's a lot of benefits to helping students make them shift. Let me share 3 with you. Number 1, they shift from follower to creator. They take charge instead of waiting for answers. Number 2, they can take ownership of their past. According to Dr. Mark Savickas, students can work to heal the hurt. What does that mean? Well, they can incorporate their past into their future by thinking about the past patterns of behavior and using that in their way to contribute to the world. Is very powerful stuff. The third reason I think we should shift to writing your story is they can prepare for reinvention. According to Yuval Noah Harari, the author of Sapiens and Homo Deus and a lot of other books, this is the most important skill for the 21st century. And from an equity perspective, we want to give students the ability to reinvent themselves so that they can transcend their bestowed upon identity. I took this phrase, bestowed upon identity, from Heather McGowan. So this is referring to your familial, socioeconomic, biological identities. The ability to write your story and reinvent yourself gives you the tools to do this. So these are the benefits for students. What are the risks if they don't write their stories? Well, here's what I like to tell students. If you don't write your story, someone else will write it for you. Youth are surrounded by powerful influences, their parents, friends, neighbors, companies, political organizations, and more. Look at the social media applications they're using. They're driven by very powerful algorithms and developing capabilities to target people, influence them. The artificial intelligence capabilities today are like very, very strong. They're only getting stronger. So if students don't take control of their stories, they're vulnerable. to succumb to these influences for better or for worse. Without this power, like the power of authorship, they're destined to be followers. And that's a shame because students are more than a product in their environment. They're unique, they're full of potential. When students write their stories, they can take back control of their lives. Instead of letting these outside influences drive them, they can create their own goals based on what's truly important to them. Pause for a story about butterflies. In 1917, biologist Thomas Hunt Morgan placed caterpillars under different light conditions. He wanted to study their reactions. Some had red light, others green, others blue, others were kept in the dark. And surprisingly, when the caterpillars transformed into butterflies, their wings had dramatic differences. The ones exposed to red light, they had intensely colored wings. The ones exposed to green light had dusky wings, blue light, and the darkness, they had pale colored wings. What Thomas Hunt Morgan demonstrated was that your environment influences your gene expression. He proved this for caterpillars, but it turns out that the environment also influences gene expression in humans, not just butterflies. There are several examples of how this impacts humans. Positive experiences like exposure to rich learning opportunities and negative influences like malnutrition or toxins in your environment, they can change the chemistry that encodes genes in your brain. Now, anecdotally, we know this. We know that environments and experiences have the power to change us. And even on a personal level, think about it, like traveling to a foreign country, surviving a near-death experience, becoming a parent, this can all change your identity and your story. And on a professional level, our work experiences can actually change and shape who you are. You can also think about the experience your students haven't had yet. First generation students, maybe students from marginalized communities, any student facing an obstacle, they may have exposure bias. They haven't been exposed to certain experiences, jobs, environments, and experiences. So it's really important that we take these experiences into consideration in the career development process. And one reason that new experiences can change us is that we can take on new traits to pursue our goals. I've looked into some research by psychologist Brian R. Little, and his language is fixed traits and free traits. He says that to pursue our goals and personal projects, sometimes we suspend our fixed traits, those traits influenced by our biology, so that we can adopt free traits. For example, an introverted person may act as an extrovert in order to advance a project. That's their fixed trait, and they take on the free trait. And he's demonstrating this. So this is how we can remake who we are. Students set goals that require them to stretch themselves to achieve them. Then, according to Dr. Little, they engage in these free traits to more successfully reach their goals and personal projects. That's an example of the aspirational identity instead of trying to find yourself. So given how powerful these experiences can be, we need to include them in students' stories. So I like to summarize it as follows. You set goals to create your aspirational self. And these goals should be seen as means, not ends. And that's going to be new for students. So here's what I think about this. Students can ask, what goal can I set that would help me become the person I need to be to achieve what I want? That's a mouthful. Let me say it again. What goal can I set that would help me become the person I need to achieve what I want? So the goal is driving the change in yourself, right? So for example, I want to lead a group of people. That's going to give me communication skills. I want to sell my own brand of clothing. That's going to help me learn about digital marketing. I want to create art that changes how people think about the environment. These keystone goals can actually enact those changes in a person. And once students set those important goals side by side with you, it might change how they see the world. Now I'm referring to what psychologists call selective attention. And a student's goal becomes the filter through which they see their lives and their environment. That's a very powerful mechanism as they create their story. So for example, after the challenge card sort that you had them do, maybe you had them research some more information, right? Like you had a student that said they want to collect and use big data, then they filled out their challenge profile. They found companies working on that, people working there, jobs that they had, learning they had to do. These data elements can become their goals and the cornerstone of their stories. All that information is now going to become a filter for them. Like those goals will influence what they focus on, what they see moving forward. I've given you another example here. This is one we developed when we were presenting in Idaho. If a student chooses create meaningful experiences for others, they might want to work for a virtual reality company like Blackbox, and they might want to be like Kyle, who's a lead concept artist there. And Kyle did a bachelor's degree in illustration, probably developed a lot of skills along the way. You might have done this hundreds of times, so I'm not explaining anything new to you. With all this information, all of these new data points after the card sort, now they have a new way to reflect. They can answer that big question: in order to contribute to the challenge I care about, who do I need to become? Now they're setting goals from a deeper data source that's more than just job titles, and it helps them differentiate themselves. So this is one of my favorite questions, in the sense that it might help them see their identity in a new way. And it can help them contribute differently because, and I like to phrase this as weird is better than normal. Here's why. In career exploration, we know that who you are matters. And when you're helping students shift from simply finding themselves to writing their story, they can highlight who they are, how they're different, and how they can help. This is because the world's not looking for a copy of an existing musician, politician, writer, or CEO. They're looking for someone unique who's ready to contribute. That's the power of weird. And I'm using weird in a provocative way, but it's come up in discussions with me with students. So this helps them highlight their differences so they can stand out from the crowd. So weird helps. Normal is too hard to work with. And this is what dream enablers do. They can help see the value of the weird. Dream destroyers, on the opposite side, they do things differently. For them, they don't help students write their stories. That's too long. It's too complicated, takes too much time. Instead, they use assessments. They want to give students easy answers. You're an EFTJ, here's what you should do for the rest of your life. I know that tools like MBTI and DISC can be fun, but they can also be misused. They can be used to typecast students and even worse, give them the impression they should do one job for the rest of their lives. There's probably 2,500 personality tests on the market. Many of them are not reliable. Reliable being a technical term that means if you take it again, will you get the same results? For example, if you retake the MBTI in a 5-week gap, there's about a 50% chance that you'll fall into a different personality category. I haven't checked the reliability of the Harry Potter personality quiz online, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's higher than that. Even worse than that, personality is not necessarily a great predictor of fit in the job. This is because there's many ways to contribute to a job. Let me give you an example. Who would be a better candidate to be a nutritionist? An introvert or an extrovert? I think we could argue that both approaches could be useful, right? There are many ways of doing that. And Alex and Jess and I were thinking about several other examples, different fields, thinking and feeling, who's better? Or what about if we took the theory of if you had a different learning style, like who would be better, someone with this style or that style? Quantitative assessments that connect you with job titles discount the power of diversity, the opportunity that diversity brings. There's so many different ways to contribute to a job. If you're different than the norm or the traditional approach, that's likely to have value in the right context. So when we typecast too seriously with assessments, it can hurt students. And at a time where we want to inspire them, we can pigeonhole them. You help students that are usually stuck where they are now. So we need to be careful not to get them deeper in that hole. When we start the career exploration with the self, we run the risk of crystallizing a past identity that does not include the aspirational self. There's a huge benefit to ending the process with self-awareness and story instead of starting with it. It helps students incorporate their discoveries into their aspirational selves. Remember, think about all the work that you did. Think about all the faces that you saw when they did the challenge cards. They learned something new. You said to them something that they had never heard before. They did some industry research. They met someone. They found a website. All of this data, it can all be integrated into their stories now. And this is the work that you do. You broaden their horizons with new research. You help them learn that the world needs them. You give them a new perspective to analyze the labor market. And now they're uniquely equipped to create that inspiring aspirational self. And think about the broader context of our world. The world is changing more quickly. In this context where the world is changing more quickly, we need a new approach. And I'd like to argue that it doesn't start with story, it ends with it. Okay, let me pause there. I'd love to get your thoughts, comments, reactions. I know I might have missed a lot of comments along the way. Let me catch up with you, but please add some thoughts in the chat. Would love to hear what you have to say. Nicola, supporting anyone in connecting to themselves gifts with the opportunity to own who they are and becoming and have attention to determining their future self. It gifts them with that. Oh, I misread that. Yeah. Own who they are. That's pretty powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Lennox, interesting point. Kids on social media create their aspirational self all the time. Oh, interesting. Think about the number of likes. Think about the follows. For those of you who have used Pinterest before, you know, Pinterest, the concept is you pin things, and that kind of like, you can kind of build an aspirational identity in one specific sphere in your life. Let's say cooking, for example. But that's about dreaming. I think that's what I heard the founder of Pinterest say, is that he wants to help the world dream. I may be misrepresenting his words, but it sounded like that. That connects with what you just said to me, Lennox, because, you know, let's say you're on TikTok or on Instagram. Who are you following? What are you liking? What are you watching? Isn't that part of your aspirational self? Is that what you were saying, by the way, Lennox? Or am I? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's great. Okay, great. Others, thoughts, questions, comments, reactions? I have two questions for you, by the way. I want to know what resonated with you the most, what resonated with you the least. So two questions: what resonated with you the most? And what I said, what resonated with you the least? And again, I'm taking your comments seriously because it's really going to help me in crafting that specific chapter. Michael, regarding social media, it's an aspirational self or peer pressures, comparing self-evaluation, just wondering. Oh, it's a hybrid, right? Like some of it is probably quite positive, right? Like, but some of it definitely not. Celeste, and the social media follows can be incorporated into the story. What interests them? Yeah, I've seen a lot of career practitioners do good creative work around that. One classic one that's not social media that I've seen is show me 10 pictures that you love on your phone, you know, in your favorites. And then they're able to start talking about that. And that, you know, you take someone who I have no idea what I want to do, and then they've got a lot of things to talk about that they really love. I've heard folks do that with songs, their favorite lyrics from songs. So I'm sure you could have a version of that on in terms of tell me who you follow on social media. Who do you watch on YouTube? Yeah, Amber, you're going in that direction too. Yeah, I see it as well. Kara says, I really like this approach overall. My only caveat is we need to be careful not to give students the message that they aren't enough, encouraging them to dream without encouraging them to mask. I think you're completely right. I think that's a huge risk. So that's what you need to balance it and temper it with. There's something promising and exciting about creating a future self, but a lot of our students suffer from, let's call it imposter syndrome, to say like, am I enough to help, to contribute? I'm just going to reread you like my take on it. You know what? I'm not going to find it. So let me just try off the cuff. I think the role of a dream enabler is walking that fine line, Kara, is celebrating their current strengths and what they have to offer now, and getting them to be excited for all that they can become. That's hard to do. How do you do both at the same time? Well, I think that's your expertise. The folks on this call, that's what you can do, you know? And I guess my concern is that maybe our traditional training focuses a lot on the self-awareness part and doing that first, which is why I brought this up now. So let's for fun, we'll do a before and after. So stopping sharing the poll, and I'm going to give you the V2, and I want to see if our numbers have changed. V2 launch. Tell me where you're at. Does that, are you at the same place? Does it change? Just curious. %, 75, 20. Okay, we got the same number as last time. Here it is. Alex, you see that? Great. I can't show them side by side, but I know that there's a lot of folks that voted for after the challenge cards now instead of before the challenge cards. And I'd love to have some opinions. So if, at this stage, if you're willing to unmute yourself or raise your hand, whatever format you like, I'd love to hear your point of view on either why you changed your mind or why you voted what you voted. I'd like to hear from some folks who haven't spoken yet, or those who have. I'm happy either way. Kim, doesn't change for me. Broadens the conversations though to weave in more after the challenge cards. Thank you. Well said. Anybody else? Patricia, I agree with Nicola's earlier comment. It really depends on where the student is, the stage of their education and development. Well, let's build on that. Are there, so can you tell me which way, Patricia? Like, if students are younger, you do less self-awareness, I'm guessing, at the beginning. Is that the direction that you meant, or the opposite way?
Yes, no, Jean-Michel, Jean-Paul, I'm not sure if my signal is strong enough to use the voice, but
Gotcha.
yes, I think I'm looking at most of the other participants who are coming from a third level background, and I'm just conscious that the students that I'm dealing with have much narrower perspectives, much just more limited life experience. So I think it is important for them to try to get a better feeling of themselves. And the challenge cards could be done alongside that as they're discovering more about themselves, to use those challenge cards to try to find out what sort of person they are, or to help them exploring what sort of person they are. But I think it's quite different if you're talking about a graduating college senior.
Yeah, thank you for weighing in, given your experience with that age group. I'd love to know other reactions from other folks in K-12. Do you feel similarly or different? And what about higher education? Do you see that difference, or do you think your students also are at the same stage? I'm open to your ideas. I'd love to hear from you. Hey, Robin, did you want to jump in? Robin, there was a little bit of static on the line. Feel free to unmute yourself, though, if you want to jump in.
Sorry, it was a mistake. I'm just losing connection and I'm in my car.
Sorry. Okay, great. No problem. So Celeste, you've worked a lot in K-12, right? So in early grades, I think there should be a focus on discovery through experience. Okay, fair enough.
If I can share something, JP.
Please.
So I teach grade 8. So those kids usually between the ages of 13 and 14. And what I found is a lot of kids at that age, there's two types. There are kids who have a goal already set for them by their parents or their cultural beliefs. And then there's others who are kind of afraid to have any aspirations for various reasons. What I like about the challenge card is it kind of sets up as a scaffold to give kids an entry point into discovering what type of qualities could be useful for certain things. And once they can see themselves in those possible career paths, I think it kind of opens the door for them to allow themselves to see those skills or see how they can build those skills to become successful in a particular career.
Great, thank you for sharing. Patricia, another reaction here from Michael, I think it's addressed to your comment. Seems like a lot of university students are still very undecided or unsure of their motivation or their choices. If that's useful for you to know from your colleagues in higher education. Let me take us in a different direction with Amber's comment. Amber says, I love the aspirational self, though I find that it's a challenge. It's challenging to balance what is realistic and expectations for them in terms of given the needs for financial stability. Curious how you have handled this. And if I can expand it, Amber, in the broadest sense possible. And then I want to ask the group to respond before I respond. And tell me, Amber, if I'm taking this the wrong way, but okay, so I'm saying write a story. What if your student writes a story that you think is wild, unachievable, not realistic? They want to be a doctor, they don't like science. Something that you think, well, wait a minute, this one is disconnected from some practical facts. And I'm not talking about, being really negative about doing something difficult, but just something that you think, I might want to provide some insights here because their story is very different than their current circumstances. How do you all deal with that situation when a student shares information like that about their aspirational self?
Actually, I'd like to add, JP, I think it's also really interesting that in some ways, students might create this unachievable story, but I've actually noticed that a lot of the students that I work with, they are actually very realistic about their expectations, and they're often like, oh, like it's going to be hard to get a job. It's going to, I think they're a little bit afraid of dreaming, and maybe it comes from, what they've learned in school about how they've seen maybe their parents struggle with getting jobs and where they wanted to get to, or maybe they've just seen a lot of people graduate from university and still not have a job or still be in more entry level. So it's interesting to see on one hand, a student can be very not realistic, but I find that more so they're afraid of dreaming to become the person that they want to become as well. So, and the financial aspect really comes into play because they're like, well, I want to own maybe I want to not have to rent for the rest of my life. I want to own a house, and houses are like over $1 million in Vancouver. So they know that they need to start making money, but what their real dream was to start a business. So now they're trying to balance this. Okay, maybe I will do this for school, and eventually when I make enough money, I might be able to have a business, but then I don't know if that's really realistic for me. So that's kind of where my thinking was kind of coming from, because I've seen this a lot with my clients. Some of them are students and some of them are early into their career as well.
Great. I'm hearing you speak, and of course, these are the classic issues, right? I'm just glad that you're there with them while they're wrestling through them, right? And I've got some opinions and point of view, but I want to open it up. How do other folks deal with this? I know that this has happened to you too. People who have, the expectations are way too low for themselves, or maybe they're way too high. How do you deal with that?
I'd love to comment on this, JP, because I see this all the time, exactly what Amber's describing. I work at the University of Wisconsin in River Falls, and we have over 40% of our students are first generation. We're also really well known for our animal science, our agriculture program, so a lot of students come from that world. And generally, if you were to ask them, what's your aspirational self, you would get answers like, I want to be financially secure, I want to support my family. It's difficult a lot of times to get my students to dream beyond that. So I loved using the challenge cards, and I really like the framework you've presented, JP, because I feel like it gives them a chance to just dive right into the practical challenges. So my students generally are not interested in a find yourself conversation at the beginning of the process at all. They tend to feel like that's a luxury they don't have. So I like the framework of just jumping in. Okay, we want to find, financial security. All right, let's look at these challenges. Let's look at these industries and figure out how we can pair those two things together.
Thanks for saying that. That's good to hear that it resonates with your students. So you're, so you met a lot of students that you think they could be doing more dreaming. I think that's a huge part of our role. We'll talk about the other side after, but a huge part of our role is getting them to dream more deeply, to go further into the dream, to double down into the dream, to have a bigger dream. I know some of my best mentors that have been memorable in my life, they help me dream more. So that is part of our role and responsibility in what we do. And I think we have a huge part in helping them work backwards from that dream. Okay, what is it going to take to get there? And what I've seen parents do, which is a mistake, is to give them that information very quickly. You don't have the grades to do that. That's very competitive. I see so many students that are afraid of competition. I shouldn't do that because it's hard to work there. That's a competitive job, and what happened to the benefits of competition, the fun of competing, striving to compete because you want to contribute to the world? So I see our role as helping them work through those issues and coaching them as they're doing the research themselves. I like for them to be, get some of those tough answers while they're doing informational interviews instead of directly from me, or directly from their parents. No, you can't do that. Getting it straight from the source is much more empowering experience. It's 100 times slower. It's way faster for you to kill someone's dream, right away by saying, no, you can't do that. The process I just suggested is way slower, but it's much more empowering for them to go through it themselves and realize it themselves. Can we get somebody else to do the other side, which is like student has a dream that there's no way, or we really need to check their expectations. What do you say? What do you do?
And some of my experience with high school students, sometimes confronting with some factual information challenges them to overcome or to redouble their efforts. That's something that I experienced with students.
You gave a little nugget here, Celeste, didn't you, of your style? Can you tell us more about this? How this use questions about what would you expect to happen if? Can you tell us more?
Well, I'm just getting from students what their expectations are, and then if they tell you what they expect to happen, then you could say that could happen, but what if something else happened? Can you think that something else might happen in that situation?
You're coaching right now. You're coaching instead of telling. You're guiding them through the process of asking the right questions instead of telling them the answers. I love that. I think that's great.
JP, I think what you presented also works here, because if a student tells me something like that, I'm not going to disagree with them. First of all, I don't know, maybe their dream is realistic and I just don't know. But I think asking them, all right, who do you need to be to achieve that? What goals are you going to set? It's going to get them working towards something. Eventually their goal might shift, but it still gets them moving forward on that practical path of, all right, if this is your goal, how will you achieve it? What things will we need to put in place? And then sometimes during that process, they end up talking themselves out of it and deciding to go in a different direction anyway. But I feel like then you're less likely to like kill a dream too. You're still giving them momentum, but encouraging them to think in the realities of what will you need to do to be able to achieve this big dream that you have.
Yeah, the example you gave, like, oh, they talked themselves out of it or they realized it. That's my wish for them, is that they're in charge, they're in control. It's not coming from me deciding what they should do or not do. They're what they're capable or not capable of. When people in my life have told me that I'm not capable of something, it just drives me nuts, and I'm really motivated to do that thing, right? And you hear stories of that anecdotally all the time. So I think it's great if it stays in their power and you're there to guide them in this process. Why? Well, compared to the previous generation of career development, where maybe you had to make a few singular keystone choices for your career that would last for 20 or 40 years, that process or that conversation that Jessica just mentioned, they're going to need to do it by themselves or with others constantly throughout their life to reinvent themselves. So That's why we want to use the Celeste's coaching questions, right? Because if we just feed them the answers, we're not teaching them the process that goes behind it. And that's why what you're doing is a gift for them, not just right now, but for the rest of their lives. I was really challenged by this issue when I was doing career coaching one-on-one, and you had a student that wanted to be a professional athlete, and the parent. So I was in a situation where the parent was just looking at me like, "What's this dude gonna say now?" He wants to play professional hockey. I did what I just told you to do. So when I heard the dream, Kara said, "Be curious." Like when I heard the dream, I was curious. Oh, tell me about being a professional hockey player. Like, tell me what that's like, and learning more. And then sometimes you get to discover a dream behind the dream. It turns out that there's different reasons people want to be professional hockey players. What? Yeah, some love, setting goals and breaking them. Some love competing. Some love camaraderie. Some love being in the public eye. Like there's dreams behind the dream. So it's worth digging. And then it comes the part of working backwards. With this student, I mean, it took so long, but they realized, oh, well, most athletes to go to the professional level, this is how many hours they practice a day. This is how many hours they practice a week. Here's how many hours I practice a week. And then my job then is to shut up, right? Like I just let that sit. That took a long time. It took way longer than, hey, I don't think you can make it. The odds are small, but it's a much more empowering experience. And that person can go and do that. New areas, new fields, and it's much more empowering. Brad adds, I appreciate what you said about competition, JP. I try to reinforce the fact that taking that action and failing in the pursuit of an aspirational identity will get them closer to where they want to go than inaction. Very well said. Hey, folks, love listening to your ideas. Thank you for listening to mine. And I look forward to hearing about how you incorporate this in your practice. We have 2 minutes left together. And here's what I want to achieve in those 2 minutes. First of all, I'd love to see you again in September. If you're up for it, we're going to do another webinar, topic to be determined, but just so you keep it in the back of your mind or in your calendar, I've tentatively booked September 20th. It's a Tuesday at the same time at 4 p.m. I hope you'll be out of the rush of back to school by then and in the mood to talk about how you want to use the challenge cards and what's coming next for you. Amber, thanks for the positive feedback. I really appreciate it. And a few other things that you might be interested in. I'm supposed to share the link with you for the book that Nikolai and I were talking about. That's loading. It's loading very slowly. I don't think that worked. Did it, Alex? Sorry, Alex, I can't see you. But
I can.
Oh,
Yep, we
did.
can see.
Jess, it worked. Okay, great. And if you could put that link in the chat, Jess, to the book, that would be very useful for people to have access to. And today I made a lot of references to folks that I've already talked to, folks that I've already met, folks that are using the challenge cards for years. But we've got a lot of new folks, I assume, on the call today too, just from NACE and NCDA. Some of you are watching the recording. If you want help thinking about how to integrate this in your career practice, in career services, book a call. We love doing this work. We love empowering people with the challenge mindset. Feel free to book a time, whether it's to talk about how you want to use this for the first time, or if you already have a subscription to the digital challenge cards, you're thinking, how do I do more of this next year? Our job is to share stories from other schools that might inspire you and give you ideas and make your job easier. So please feel free to do that. That's actually a QR code that you can actually book a meeting with there. If that's not a good way for you to book a meeting, feel free to email me directly, and I'll put my email in the chat. What else did you want to talk about today that we haven't talked about yet? Okay, we did it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your comments. Love the positive feedback. Love the energy. Amber, it's funny, your question, I had written it as an FAQ. What happens if you dream too big? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to take that out. That's too much. But I think what was on your mind will be on every reader's mind during the chapter. So I'm going to put it back in. Thanks to you. So thanks for that. And thanks to everybody else for showing up, for your comments. Loved seeing you, love meeting with you. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your summer. Thanks. Thank you. Oh, PowerPoint. We need the slides. Did they get the slides?
I can throw the link in the chat now.
Great. Thank you.
And we also have the emails too for the individual that signed up. So we'll follow up with a post email after the webinar.
Terrific. Thanks, Celeste, for coming. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Sanaz. Hope you found it useful.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is great.
Thank you.
Be thinking more about this. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm glad. Celeste, we should do a presentation in Chicago. Is that what you're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
You want to do it with me?
Well, I was sure, but I was thinking about our constituency group meeting too. I was thinking about having you come, maybe do a little, at least an intro with the
Right.
K-12 group. We talked about that in
Yeah.
Anaheim. So, but thanks a lot. This is great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye. Sanaz, thanks for coming. I don't know if you're still there, but if you are, what did you think? Did you like it? Not like it? I'm open to your thoughts. You're on mute, and I think maybe you're not there. You're not still there. So I'm going to say thank you for coming. And you and I were chatting by email. So I'm going to follow up with you actually by email after that. So thanks for coming. Okay, so it's just the three of us. I'm going to press stop recording. Thanks, everybody.